Hi everyone, it's Jim. I have another journal that I made that I thought I'd like to share with all of you. I have a little work trip coming up in a few days to Florida, and I know there'll be some beach time. So I promised myself I wouldn't do anything new. I would just use old materials and old papers that have been sitting around or scraps, and that's sort of where this journal came from. It's an art journal. It's a junk journal. I'm not really sure what it is. I've got my Peerless watercolors ready to take with me. It slips right into my traveler's notebook, so that's nice and tidy. This is made from some material and some silk. I like how the silk on the edges almost looks like worn feathers you'd find on a sand. And then just some different art papers, mulberry papers that I stitched into the shape of a seagull, because I think of seagulls when I think of the seaside. I have a lot of really nice marble papers that I found in my travels. So I used some of the marble papers for my inside cover. A great quote: "I love the kind of tired that comes from a lot of fresh air and a little too much sun." Love that. I have some really cool paper that's almost like cotton that I dyed with inks. It looks like underwater scene, and I did some quick little pen and inks of rays on them. This paper, even though it doesn't really match the journal, it was made by elementary students. The art teacher gave it to me, and it is pendulum painting. So they had something suspended, and they let the pendulum go back and forth, and the art teacher gave it to me, so I used it for my journal. This reminds me a little bit of our airport in Indianapolis. There's curved beams on the ceiling, so and this is at the airport, this statue of a Southwest plane, so I printed it out and covered that top edge. Little watercolor here and pen and ink. This was actually inspired by something I saw on Pinterest, and I didn't like the feet, so I propped my feet up and attempted to draw them, and they're super ugly. But I love the way this iridescent watercolor looks like the ocean. So I wrote a little haiku about my feet: "Even ugly feet, when submerged in the ocean, sparkle like diamonds." This is some eco-dyed paper. I think I used honeysuckle, and for some reason it came out yellow. I must not have done something with the dye, but it's been sitting aside, and it sort of looked like underwater foliage kind of floating. Little envelope made from a piece of map. Found some great books that were about the ocean side, and I think this one was called Gifts from the Sea, but it was almost written like prose, so I pulled some pages from that to use in my journal. Another dyed page that almost looks like leaves floating in the water. Love this page. You can almost see the reed in the water with little litter around, and I drew this little fish here with a white gel pen. It almost reminds me of batik, and so I kind of mirrored it down here with some great my wife got me some watercolors that are metallic, and I just love how that looks. I used it quite a few times in the book. Let's see what's next. Oh, I just printed this off on this was a almost like glass seam, but it was a bag that silverware was in on vacation, and everybody saved the bags for me. So I printed this oyster on it and then put a little piece of watercolor paper for my trip. Just some ripped paper, torn and then sewn with some wavy lines, and a little collaged ship there. But I love this. I found so many great little poems that matched my journal after I made it. "Far out at sea a sail bends in the freshening breeze, yields to the rising gale that sweeps over the seas." I did a lot of little stitching, kind of like waves, and I painted a little pelican with some acrylic paint. Found one of those quotes about words that really no one has ever heard of. "Spoondrift, a showery sprinkling of seawater or fine spray swept from the tops of the waves." Sort of hard to say, almost like a tongue twister. Little graphite watercolor drawing, some stitched waves in tracing paper. I love the way that feels and sounds. Little kind of an odd abstract watercolor that I did just to cover the back of the tracing paper. And I really love this page. So I used just some of the papers that I had torn to make 4 pockets, and I thought they looked sort of oceany over some vellum matte paper. And then I took just random papers like this and painted a little seabird on it with a journal in the back. And then this one, again with that gold watercolor. Isn't that so cool? I love how that shows up in the light. And then a great little quote from that book, Gifts from the Sea, that is about a shell. And I had fun with this one, just 4 birds that I would sort of associate with Florida, just their heads poking out on the tags. This was another piece of that pendulum painting, and it reminded me a little bit of laying underneath a palm tree. So since it was so busy, I just decided to edge it with some sari silk, and I think this will probably be a page for photos. This is actually, it's pounded paper. So I had paper and then put hibiscus and impatiens just from our porch boxes, and then pounded them with a hammer, and it left the impression on there. And this was a pressed flower, so I just glued it on because I think it's the same flower as that. Just a little piece of dyed paper in there. This is a pressed coleus leaf between tracing paper. Again, I like that sound. This was actually just an experiment. I have this beautiful waxy paper, and I wasn't sure that this watercolor would paint on it, but it did a nice job. I just tore it out, put it on the side. Here's a little seagull looking up at all the other seagulls, a little with maybe some disdain because maybe they took his food that he found on the beach. Probably my food, if I know the seagulls. Little paper collage with a stamp on it. My one of my kids, I think, threw away a purse, and I dug it out of the trash because it reminded me of sun reflecting on the water, and a little bit of seaweed maybe. And this is just torn paper. I thought that turned out really well. I have different types of paper, so I tore it, and then I painted with that gold watercolor, and I found this great poem, The Ocean of Song. In a land beyond sight or conceiving, in a land where no blight is, no wrong, no darkness, no graves, and no grieving, there lies the great ocean of song. And its waves, oh its waves unbeholden by any save gods and their kind, are not blue, are not green, but are golden, like moonlight and sunlight combined. That was a perfect poem to put on the back of that. Just a little tag and a quote about the ocean. Another piece of that eco-dyed paper. It sort of looks like seaweed up here. And I did a little quick collage with just leftover papers. Another eco-dyed page. A little gull that I printed on another piece of paper that I found somewhere. I love this handmade paper. And this quote was from that Gifts from the Sea book. And it said, "The smile, the act, the relationship is hung in space, and the immediacy and purity of the present, suspended on the still point of here and now, balanced there on a shaft of air like a seagull." Perfect for that page. Little pen and ink drawing of a jellyfish, and then I just embellished a little bit around the edges with that gold paint. I think that really sort of elevated it there. Hope you can see that. This was a little glassine bag I just ran through the printer. Another quote from the book. Little tag. This was, someone got me a jelly plate for Christmas, and we've been playing with it. So this was a jelly plate, and then I did a little silhouette of a heron. Some tea-dyed papers. Another really cool inked paper. It looked a little sea-ish. Love this little layout. It's just some pen and ink pictures of birds embellished with some white acrylic paint, and then a white acrylic, looks like some type of egret maybe, just on the back of this spread. And I love this spread too. Just some random papers that I had that I did some pen and ink drawings on of seaweed. And this is a watercolor paper with a puffer fish. Love that quote. Just some fish over some printed paper. Sort of happy with the way this turned out as well. This is our I have this great old map book that I pull pages out of every once in a while, and this is our flight path that I stitched in red thread from Indianapolis to Florida, and then did a little collage of a boat and some fish with random little scraps of paper, and another little quote that I found that was sort of appropriate for the page. Just a little belly band. More quotes with some sari silk. I just ran this through the printer. I found that great little image of a seahorse, ran it through the printer, and then framed it on this great gold marbled paper that I found. And then the back of it almost feels like canvas. So I left this plain thinking maybe I would paint a scene somewhere on there. A little acrylic of a sardine. Some marble paper that I made an envelope out of, and then I latched it with a little magnet right here to keep it closed. And then I also made it a tuck spot. So my daughter bought me a Life is Good shirt for my birthday, so I kept the tag because I liked it, and then just covered the back with some inked paper to journal on, journal card. Black paper, I painted a few, sort of different style for me, but I painted a few herons or whatever those birds are. Journaling spot on the back, and a great little quote. And then my favorite, I've been doing lots of haikus lately, so I'm going to do haikus every day on these little stitch papers, but I love this quote right here. It was sunsets that taught me that beauty sometimes only lasts a couple of moments, and it was sunrises that taught me that all it takes is patience to experience all over again. That was a great way to end my book, and back cover is just the rest of the beach with the sun on it. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you got some inspiration. Maybe you'll be a little creative and use some of the ideas you found in my book to make your own book special. Have a great day. Don't let anything steal your joy.